Today, our mission is to explore one of the most baffling true crime mysteries of the 20th century.
Yeah, and baffling is almost an understatement for this one.
It really is. We are looking at the terrifying 7-year ordeal and the eventual death of a woman named Cindy James. So, okay, let's unpack this. How does a woman endure 7 years of documented terror only to die in a way that is physically nearly impossible to explain, leaving authorities totally divided on whether she was the victim of a sadistic killer or her own unraveling mind?
It's the ultimate paradox. And what makes this case so enduringly fascinating isn't just the forensic puzzle of how she died.
Right.
It's what her life and those 7 years of terror reveals about the massive blind spots in our criminal justice and mental health systems.
Yeah, the systemic failure is glaring.
Absolutely. Stalking is a unique animal. And when systems encounter something they can't neatly categorize, they often fail the very people they are designed to protect.
And to understand that failure, we really have to start at her descent into fear. Let's go back to Richmond, British Columbia in 1982.
Right, so Cindy is 44 years old.
Yeah, she's a 44-year-old nurse, and she's not just any nurse. She works specifically with emotionally difficult children.
Which takes a lot of resilience.
Exactly. Everyone describes her as empathetic, stable, highly professional. But then she separates from her husband of 16 years, a psychiatrist named Dr. Roy Makepeace.
And that's when it starts.
Yeah. Almost immediately, her world turns into an absolute nightmare.
The escalation is classic, but terrifyingly rapid. I mean, it begins with psychological warfare.
The anonymous phone calls.
Right. Just whispers or strange clicks on the other end of the line. Then it moves to property damage. Smashed porch lights. Severed phone lines.
And then the dead cats left in her yard. I mean, put yourself in Cindy's shoes for a second. Imagine you're sitting in your own living room, just trying to read a book, and suddenly your phone line goes dead and you hear a window shatter on the porch.
The sheer ambient terror of that is unimaginable.
It's horrifying, and then it gets physical. By 1983, she is being physically attacked. She's repeatedly found with nylon stockings tied tightly around her neck.
Which becomes a really grim signature in this case.
Yeah, it does. In one instance, she reported being attacked in her basement, and a friend found her completely incoherent outside her house.
And we should note the police do respond to this.
Right. They put her under 24-hour surveillance at times.
Right.
She moves home. She changes her name. She even repaints her car. She hires a private investigator, Ozzy Caban.
She did everything a victim is supposed to do.
Everything. But the perpetrator is never caught. Not a single fingerprint, not a DNA match, nothing.
Which is astounding when you consider the sheer duration of this. 7 years. I mean, law enforcement relies heavily on physical evidence.
Right. The X-ray again.
Exactly. When you have a victim presenting with brutal, undeniable physical injuries, black eyes, strangulation marks, burns, but absolutely zero trace of an attacker, investigators start to question the narrative.
Yeah, the absence of the stalker became, in the eyes of some police, evidence that the stalker just didn't exist. It's like she was living in a real-life horror movie where the monster only ever appears when the cameras are turned off.
That's a great way to put it.
But here's a crucial detail from the Reddit deep dive. Attacker wasn't entirely invisible.
Right. The basement fire incident.
Yeah. During a fire set in her basement, a friend's husband actually spotted a strange man lurking outside Cindy's house.
And when the husband shouted at him to call 911, the man fled.
Exactly. So I have to ask, was the police's growing skepticism, believing she was staging the attacks for attention, a failure of duty, or just a natural human response to the impossible logistics of the crime?
That is the crux of it, really. Human beings, and that includes police officers, we seek logical patterns.
Sure.
If you set up a 24-hour stakeout, and the moment you look away, the victim is attacked without a forced entry, the logical brain says, well, this is staged.
Because it seems impossible otherwise.
Right. But what they fail to grasp, which we now understand much better, is the extreme sophistication and patience of a fixated stalker. A highly motivated stalker will watch the watchers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they learn the shift changes, the blind spots, the routines of the private investigators and the police.
Which brings us to her final days. Because if the years of harassment were baffling, the crime scene of her death is a literal walking contradiction.
It really defies logic.
Totally. So May 25, 1989, Cindy vanishes. Her car is found in a shopping center parking lot, and the Reddit sleuths pulled out some bizarre details about this car. Yeah, the way it was parked.
Right. It wasn't parked near the doors like she normally would if she were just, running in. It was parked strangely in the middle of the lot. Inside were groceries, but specifically non-perishable ones.
And there was a blood smear on the door.
Yeah. And This is so weird. Her bank card was oddly pinned under a paper receipt so it wouldn't blow away.
We really need to pause on that specific detail. The bank card pinned under the receipt.
It's so strange.
It's a forensic paradox. Think about the psychology there. It suggests a level of meticulous care, almost like a compulsion for order.
Yeah.
If you are being violently abducted from your vehicle, you do not take the time to neatly pin your bank card under a piece of paper. It's completely at odds with a sudden violent struggle.
Right. And it gets even weirder. So 2 weeks go by. On June 8th, her body is found in the yard of an abandoned house on Blundell Road.
Just a tragic discovery.
Awful. She's lying on her side. Her hands and feet are hogtied behind her back with complex knots made from black nylon stockings. There's that signature again.
Yeah, and another stocking is tied tightly around her neck. There are no defensive wounds. But here is the kicker, the toxicology report.
This is where things get really complicated.
Yeah, she had a near-lethal dose of morphine, Valium, and flurazepam in her system. Fast-acting, heavy sedatives, but there's no syringe, no pill bottle anywhere near her.
And we have to consider the environment where she was found.
Hmm.
I mean, this wasn't a deep, impenetrable forest miles from civilization.
No, it was a residential area. The Reddit sources point out that a squatter was actually living in a van just 5 meters away from the body.
5 meters, that's practically right on top of the scene.
Exactly. How does a squatter live 5 meters away from a body wearing a bright white top and not notice a thing for 2 weeks?
It's highly unlikely.
And teenagers were partying at that abandoned house that same week, literally rocking the squatter's van for kicks, and they saw nothing either.
Plus, the autopsy noted the way her blood had pooled indicated livor mortis might have set in elsewhere.
Wait, what does livor mortis mean exactly?
Oh, livor mortis is just the medical term for the way gravity causes blood to pool in the lowest parts of a body after the heart stops pumping.
Okay, got it.
The pattern of that pooling is essentially locked in after a certain number of hours. Because her livor mortis pattern didn't match the position she was found in, investigators could tell she likely died somewhere else and was moved to that yard later.
Wow. So we have two distinct narratives colliding at a single crime scene.
Exactly.
If this is a murder, you have an attacker who manages to drug a woman, bind her in incredibly complex knots with slippery nylon, move her body to a semi-public vacant lot right under a squatter's nose, and leave absolutely zero forensic trace of themselves.
It's a masterclass in criminal evasion, if it's true. And if it's suicide, well, the logistics are staggering.
I am just in sheer disbelief. Like, how does someone ingest a lethal dose of fast-acting sedatives, dispose of the pill bottles or syringes somewhere else, walk to a vacant lot, and then hog-tie themselves behind their back?
It sounds impossible.
Even forensic knot experts replicating the scene couldn't agree if it was physically possible to tie those specific knots on yourself.
And the sedatives are the absolute key sticking point here. I mean, flurazepam and Valium are central nervous system depressants.
Which means what, exactly?
Think of them as throwing a heavy, wet blanket over your brain's communication network. They slow your breathing, your heart rate, and they absolutely destroy your fine motor skills.
Oh, wow.
And morphine is a powerful narcotic on top of that. The timeline for those drugs to take effect, combined with the extreme dexterity required to tie intricate, tight knots behind your own back with a material that stretches like nylon.
It pushes the boundaries of physiological possibility.
It really does.
So to really understand whether an attacker could pull this off or if Cindy's mind was capable of staging it, we have to look at the actual psychology and behavioral patterns of stalkers.
Right.
This is where the 2023 Open University thesis by James Sr. completely reframes things.
Yes, the academic lens is crucial here because stalking is notoriously difficult to define legally.
How so?
Well, unlike a burglary, where a window is broken and a TV is gone, stalking relies on a series of acts that, in isolation, might be perfectly lawful.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, sending a bouquet of flowers, loitering on a public sidewalk, making a phone call from a payphone. None of those are inherently illegal.
Exactly. And the thesis highlights the paladin advocacy definition, which doesn't just look at the individual acts, but the intent behind them and the impact on the victim.
Which is a much better way to look at it.
Yeah, they define it as a pattern of unwanted, fixated, and obsessive behavior.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this thesis highlights a super complaint filed by the Susie Lamplow Trust.
A super complaint.
Yeah, it's a formal process in the UK.
Yeah.
They heavily criticize police forces for chronically misidentifying stalking as lower-level isolated harassment.
Wow.
The academic research directly mirrors Cindy's case. Back in the 1980s, the RCMP were viewing her incidents in isolation, Broken window on Tuesday,
Yeah.
weird phone call on Friday.
Just a string of bad luck, essentially.
Right. They didn't view it as a comprehensive, suffocating pattern of coercive control and surveillance. That lack of a framework, that failure to connect the dots, led directly to their skepticism.
And the thesis drops a terrifying statistic to back that up. 94% of domestic homicides involve prior stalking behavior.
94%. That's huge.
It's massive. It proves the intense risk of serious harm when a stalker is fixated. It's not just a nuisance, it's a precursor to lethality.
It absolutely is. And it validates the theory that a highly organized stalker operating with that level of lethal patient fixation could absolutely slip through the cracks of a police force that was simply treating her like a paranoid psychiatric patient.
But here's where it gets really interesting. The thesis isn't just about male ex-partners.
No, it covers a wide spectrum.
Yeah, it notes that older female stalkers and those who stalk neighbors can be highly, highly persistent. Now apply that to the theory of factitious disorder.
Okay, this is a dark path to go down.
It is, but hear me out. Factitious disorder is a condition where someone intentionally creates or exaggerates medical or psychological symptoms to assume the sick role and gain sympathy.
Right.
If Cindy suffered from a severe mental unraveling, could she have effectively been stalking herself, acting as both the relentless perpetrator and the terrified victim?
That is easily the most psychologically complex theory in this entire case. I mean, factitious disorder is driven by an intense, overwhelming need for sympathy, attention, and validation.
To the point of physical harm, right?
Yes, the individual will go to agonizing lengths, undergoing unnecessary surgeries, inflicting horrific, painful wounds on themselves just to maintain that narrative.
That's just wild.
Now take it a step further into something like dissociative identity disorder, or DD, where a person's psyche literally fractures into separate, distinct personas as a trauma response.
So wait, you're saying one persona wouldn't know what the other was doing?
Precisely. The thesis discusses how stalkers are motivated by a need for power, control, or a response to profound insecurity.
Right.
If Cindy's mind had fractured, her stalker persona could have been exerting ultimate control over her victim persona, fulfilling a deep-seated psychological need without her conscious mind even realizing she was doing it.
Wow. That is just, wow. If we accept that her mind might have fractured into these two competing roles, victim and stalker, it really forces us to look at the three ways her life could have ended and how they map onto the academic data.
Let's break those down.
Let's start with the one her family insists is true. Theory number one, outright murder. They point to her ex-husband, Dr. Makepeace. The police did look at him. They even traced a few threatening calls directly to his psychiatric office.
And we must remember, just for the sake of the facts, Dr. Makepeace vehemently denied any involvement.
Yes, of course.
He had alibis for many incidents and was never charged. He maintained throughout his life that Cindy was suffering from profound mental health issues.
True. But the Reddit sleuths point out some lingering forensic threads here. For instance, there were untested pubic hairs found at the crime scene.
Which is a massive loose end.
Huge, and even crazier. A voiceless, threatening phone call she received was traced to the Richmond Airport PA system.
That detail is just incredible.
Think about the logistics of that for a second. To hack an airport PA system in 1989, you can't just press a button on a computer at home.
No, you have to be there.
You have to physically go to the airport, find an information desk, perhaps fake an emergency, and have them page her name just to deliver a threat she'd hear over the phone.
It's so elaborate.
It requires a physical presence, someone moving around the city, tracking her movements, and actively taunting her.
Which brings us back to theory number 2, the suicide or dissociative identity disorder theory. The idea that she staged the ultimate attack on herself.
And the Reddit thread mentions a fascinating, incredibly tragic detail about her past that supports this.
The fiancé.
Yes. Supposedly, when she was in college, she had a fiancé who died by suicide on a ski trip with her. But here's the catch. She never told anyone his name. No one ever met him. There's no record of him. It raises the question, was this phantom fiancé an early sign of a developing delusional disorder? Was she creating these elaborate trauma narratives long before 1982?
It's a profound question. If the fiancé was a delusion, it establishes a psychological baseline. It shows a history of creating highly dramatic, tragic scenarios where she is the central, suffering, surviving victim.
Right.
Which leads right into theory number 3, the staging gone wrong theory.
Explain that one.
Under this theory, she plans a dramatic fake attack to finally prove to the skeptical police that her stalker is real. But she completely miscalculates the massive dosage of morphine and Valium, accidentally crossing the line from staging to suicide.
But let me push back on you with the data from the thesis here.
Yeah.
The academic research says 55% of homicides involve prior threats.
That's true.
Cindy received very real, very explicit threats for 7 years. Doesn't the sheer duration, the steady escalation of violence, the dead cats, the cut phone lines, doesn't that point more to a sadistic, fixated killer than a 7-year self-inflicted staging act?
It's a very fair point.
I mean, who burns down their own basement while they are inside the house?
You're right to challenge it, and the duration is the biggest argument against the suicide theory.
Yeah.
To maintain a self-inflicted campaign of terror for 7 years without ever slipping up, without breaking character, without a single neighbor or surveillance camera ever catching you smashing your own light bulb.
It would be almost impossible.
It requires a level of operational security that borders on the superhuman.
Right.
The thesis discusses triggers, events like arrests, court dates, or perceived humiliation that cause a real stalker's violence to escalate.
Oh, like pushing back against them.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
If there was a real stalker out there, perhaps Cindy's decision to hire an investigator to paint her car to fight back.
Yeah.
Maybe those acts of defiance were the triggers that escalated his behavior from harassment to murder.
And ultimately, the legal system just threw its hands in the air. The 1990 coroner's inquest into her death lasted 3 months.
3 months of testimony.
They heard from 80 witnesses, doctors, not specialists, police officers, psychiatrists, and the result was a devastating open verdict.
Meaning, legally, they couldn't decide how she died.
The evidence was just a perfect stalemate.
Which is agonizing for the family, but legally honest. The evidence contradicts itself so perfectly that any definitive ruling, murder, or suicide would require completely ignoring half the established facts of the case.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? Why should you care about a nurse from British Columbia who died over 30 years ago?
It's a good question.
Because Cindy's story challenges how we view victims whose trauma doesn't fit a clean, easily digestible narrative. We want our victims to be perfect and our evidence to be binary, like that broken arm x-ray.
But trauma is rarely clean.
Exactly. But if Cindy was mentally ill, she needed profound structural compassion and intense psychiatric care. If she was being stalked by a phantom, she needed relentless, unquestioning protection.
And in both scenarios, the institutions designed to protect us fundamentally failed her.
It did.
But if there's any legacy here, it's that this case changed things. It forced a reckoning. It fundamentally altered how law enforcement investigates psychological violence.
That's at least a small silver lining.
Yeah, it highlighted the desperate need for behavioral profiling, for recognizing the holistic patterns of coercive control, and for understanding that a lack of physical evidence does not equal a lack of danger.
Right.
We are better at collecting digital evidence and understanding the psychology of fixation today, precisely because of the failures in cases like Cindy's.
Which leaves me with a final lingering thought for you to mull over. We live in a radically different era today.
Oh, totally.
It's a digital age, a world of ubiquitous Ring cameras on every porch, constant cell tower pings, and inescapable digital footprints.
You can't hide easily anymore.
Right. So could a perfect mystery like Cindy James even happen today? Or have we simply forced the invisible stalker to evolve?
That's a chilling thought.
Maybe they aren't hiding in the bushes outside your window anymore. Maybe they've morphed into something even more insidious, hiding in the anonymous, completely untraceable corners of cyberspace.
The tools and the technology certainly change, but the dark psychology of the stalker remains exactly the same.
Exactly. So the next time you look at a situation expecting a clean x-ray, remember Cindy James. Sometimes the most terrifying monsters don't show up in the film at all. They just live out there in the muddy waters.